Welcome back to the channel, where we dive deep into the darkest corners of history to uncover the most chilling and bizarre true crime stories ever recorded. If you're a fan of mysteries that blend the gruesome reality of human nature with the unsettling whispers of the supernatural, then make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a deep dive. Today, we are exploring 4 incredible historical cases featuring monsters who hid in plain sight, claiming divine protection, practicing dark magic, and pushing the boundaries of early forensic science. Our first story takes us to July 1st, 1901, on the beautiful German island of Rügen. 2 young brothers, Peter and Hermann, aged 8 and 6, went out to pick blackberries in the woods, but never came home for dinner. A massive search party scoured the village and the surrounding forests, initially hoping the boys had just gotten lost. But the next morning, a searcher stumbled upon a scene of unimaginable horror. Both children had been brutally murdered and dismembered, with their remains scattered across the forest floor. In a chilling twist, their hearts had been completely removed. This sparked absolute terror among the locals, especially since several sheep had been found slaughtered in the exact same mutilated fashion just days prior, causing rumors of werewolves and dark rituals to spread like wildfire. The police, however, focused on earthly suspects and soon found a witness who had seen the boys speaking to a local carpenter named Ludwig Tessnow on the day they vanished. When questioned, Ludwig was eerily calm, insisting he had been working at home all day. But a search of his house revealed damp, freshly washed clothes covered in dark stains. Ludwig claimed the stains were simply wood dye from his carpentry work. His unnerving calmness almost convinced the police that a man so rational could not possibly be a savage killer. But a deeper background check revealed a terrifying coincidence. 3 years earlier, in 1898, Ludwig was the prime suspect in the dismemberment of 2 7-year-old girls in a nearby forest. In that case, he was seen fleeing the woods in stained clothing, but successfully used the exact same excuse, claiming the dark spots were just wood dye. Because early investigators believed only raving lunatics committed such brutal crimes, and because they lacked the technology to prove otherwise, he had walked free. But in 1901, Ludwig ran out of luck. Just months before the brothers were murdered, a brilliant scientist named Paul Uhlenhuth had developed a revolutionary forensic test that could distinguish human blood from animal blood and paint. When this groundbreaking antigen test was applied to Ludwig's clothing, it completely destroyed his alibi, revealing that his garments were soaked in both human blood and sheep blood. This made Ludwig Tessnow one of the very first killers in history to be brought down by modern forensic blood analysis. He was sentenced to death by guillotine, though recent historical discoveries suggest his sentence was quietly commuted to life in a secure asylum, where he remained until 1939, when he was executed during the horrific purges of the Second World War. But while Ludwig tried to hide his monstrous acts behind the guise of a normal carpenter, our next killer openly embraced his reputation as a supernatural terror. Traveling back to the turbulent 1500s in the Holy Roman Empire, we meet Peter Niers, a peasant who transformed into a notorious bandit and allegedly one of the most prolific serial killers in human history. Mentored by a vicious outlaw, Peter formed his own gang of 24 men and began terrorizing the countryside. Initially, they ambushed carriages on lonely roads, but soon their confidence grew and they began pillaging entire villages, murdering anyone who stood in their way. By 1577, Peter was captured and confessed under torture to 75 murders, but he somehow managed to escape custody, seemingly vanishing into thin air. It was after this escape that the legend of Peter Niers took a deeply supernatural turn. Pamphlets and folk songs spread across Europe, claiming he had made a pact with the devil, gaining the power of invisibility and the ability to shapeshift into animals. These dark rumors insisted that his powers came from gruesome black magic rituals involving the remains of unborn children, which he supposedly carried in a leather pouch. Whether he actually believed in these occult practices or simply used his mastery of disguise to evade capture, Peter remained on the run for years, carrying a broadsword and a terrifying reputation. His reign of terror finally ended in 1581, when he let his guard down at a public bathhouse. He left his belongings, including his infamous leather pouch, with an innkeeper, who peeked inside and was horrified to discover severed infant remains. The terrified locals formed a posse, ambushed Peter in the bathhouse, and dragged him into custody. What followed was a brutally agonizing 3-day execution where Peter confessed to an unbelievable 544 murders. While historians debate whether that massive body count was real or just a result of extreme medieval torture, there is no doubt that Peter Niers was a very real and very deadly historical monster whose crimes were so savage that society had to invent supernatural explanations just to comprehend them. As we move forward in time to the early days of the Australian penal colonies, we find another killer who believed supernatural forces were on his side. But this time, he believed his actions were guided by divine intervention. In 1841, a man named John Lynch was roaming the outback of New South Wales. Lynch was an Irish convict and former bushranger who had already narrowly escaped the gallows for a murder in 1835. Harboring a grudge against an old employer, Lynch stole a wagon and some livestock before hitting the road to Sydney. Along the way, he met a man named Edmund Ireland and a young boy who were transporting a valuable load of goods. Deciding he wanted their cargo, he waited until morning, sent the boy to gather the animals, and struck him dead with a single blow from his tomahawk. He then casually walked back to camp and delivered the same brutal fate to Edmund before sitting down to eat the breakfast his victim had just cooked. Believing that God was answering his prayers and protecting him from consequence, Lynch sold the stolen goods and continued his rampage. He soon joined forces with a father and son, the Frasers, and used the exact same method to butcher them in the woods, claiming their wagon as his own. Armed with his bloody tomahawk, Lynch then returned to a farm owned by the Mulligan family to settle an old financial dispute. In a display of cold-blooded violence, he systematically murdered the father, the mother, the teenage son, and the 14-year-old daughter before burning their bodies and burying the remains. In a display of supreme arrogance, he forged documents to take ownership of the Mulligan farm, living under the alias John Dunleavy. He even hired hands to work the land and played the part of a respectable farmer for 6 months. But his belief that he was an untouchable instrument of God led to a fatal mistake. When he decided to murder a newly hired fence builder named Kearns Landrigan, he became incredibly sloppy. He killed Kearns near a bridge, leaving obvious cart tracks, victims' belongings scattered around, and witnesses who had seen them drinking together the night before. Police quickly tracked the evidence back to the farm, uncovered the remains of the Mulligan family, and exposed Lynch's true identity. Despite representing himself in court and using his cunning intellect to try to discredit the witnesses, the sheer mountain of evidence was too much. Lynch was sentenced to hang, and the night before his execution, he finally dropped the act and confessed to the priest, admitting to a total of 9 brutal murders. He went to the gallows without a shred of remorse, cementing his dark legacy. As the final deep dive today, we travel back to 1809 in England to uncover the bizarre and terrifying tale of Mary Bateman, widely known as the Yorkshire Witch. Unlike women who were tragically and falsely accused of witchcraft in earlier centuries, Mary actively claimed to be a powerful sorceress, using her supposed magical abilities to scam, extort, and eventually murder her trusting clients. Starting off as a petty thief who was fired from countless jobs, Mary realized she could make far more money by preying on superstitions. She set up shop as a wise woman, selling fake love potions, breaking imaginary curses, and performing back-alley procedures. She even charged people to look at a supposed magical hen that laid eggs predicting the end of the world, though it was later revealed Mary was just using ink to write on normal eggs and forcing them back inside the poor bird. Mary expanded her criminal enterprise by inventing 2 powerful spiritual guides named Mrs. Moore and Mrs. Blythe. She told her vulnerable clients that their guides could solve any problem, but required expensive tributes. When a wealthy couple named William and Rebecca Perigo came to Mary believing Rebecca was cursed by an evil spirit, Mary saw the perfect target. She told them her guide Mrs. Blythe required them to sew gold coins into their bed linen and ordered them to continually send her valuable goods like silver, fine china, and massive amounts of money to keep the dark spirits at bay.
Mary kept all these items for herself while forging letters from the fake Mrs. Blythe, instructing the couple to never seek medical help and threatening them with sudden death if they disobeyed. After draining their finances, Mary realized she needed to silence them permanently to cover her tracks. She provided the couple with a special powder to mix into their daily puddings, claiming it was a powerful magical cure. In reality, she was feeding them lethal doses of mercuric chloride and arsenic. William only took one bite of his poisoned pudding because it tasted so foul, but Rebecca ate her entire portion and died in excruciating agony. Still blinded by fear, William did not suspect Mary until months later, when he finally opened the magical charms hidden in his bed, only to find rotten cabbage leaves instead of gold. Realizing his wife had been murdered for profit, William set a trap for Mary and had the police arrest her. At her trial in York Castle, her